Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Welcome to our first Princeton Makes podcast. This is very, very exciting. We just want to share a little bit about the idea behind the podcast. And really, we hope to interview a new artist, one of our artists from our co-op, every month, and just ask a series of questions about what brought them to the arts, what their wins are, what their struggles are, and all that kind of stuff. But those of you who don't know, Princeton Makes is a co-op, an artist co-op in Princeton, New Jersey. For those of you who are not local, we're about 32 artists. And we all kind of help the space run in our own ways, whether it's covering the retail space or bringing odds and ends in here and scheduling who's working, all the things. But we all kind of work together to make the space what it is. And we are here at Princeton Makes right now. My name's Rebecca, and I'm the host of this show. And today we have Pamela Pagan.
Woohoo!
I said your name right?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Just tell us a little bit about your art and how you got to your style of art, and I guess anything else that comes to mind just right now.
Okay, so my background has always been art. I went to school at both University of Cincinnati's Design, Art, and Architecture. At the time it was DAA, but now it's DAAP. And from there, initially I went to school for photography and wanted to major in fashion design. So Cincinnati really wasn't that high up on the fashion forward. They were still wearing like Oshkosh Bagosh when I got there. And I was like, yeah, I think I'll head back to New York. And I got into the Fashion Institute of Technology. So a lot of what I do is based on my background, be it line, silhouette, color, shape, and my favorite thing is abstract art. And from that, I actually had a cousin who was doing resin art, and I went to see her in a gallery in Manhattan, fell in love with her artwork, and she said to me, "You can do this. You could totally do this." And so I went back and I started Googling resin art and learning from many different artists, different types of resin art. And I started doing resin art about 2 years ago. And from that, what was initially wall art also became practical art.
I love it. Now, for those listening who don't know what resin art is, can you explain it?
Okay, resin art is a type of epoxy that hardens to a plastic-like substance.
Cool.
And there are different kinds of epoxies that the ratios change, whether it's 2-to-1 or 3-to-1. And
I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
It's 2 parts. As you mix them, they harden. You have a certain amount of lead time that you can work with them. Different epoxies, different lead times.
We will be linking Pamela's art to our show notes.
Great.
So everyone can see your beautiful,
Thank you.
amazing art. Do you want to talk about your setup a little bit? I know resin is like super finicky to work with like dust and all that kind of, like, do you want to elaborate on your
Sure.
workspace, and just so we can
What
be
started
more
off as a
familiar?
little space has grown into a large space because resin art takes at least 24 hours to cure, and nothing can move in the room that it's in. So although you have maybe an hour to get it done, it's not finished for at least 24 hours.
Right.
So it requires a lot of space for drying and so on. The amount of supplies that are required for resin art, I would love to be able to do my resin art here at the co-op along with all of you that have your own little spaces, but because it requires a respirator, it wouldn't be fair for everyone else to breathe
Right.
in my epoxy
Everyone.
mixes.
Everyone would need a respirator.
Right, everyone. So I do it at home, and I have to have great ventilation, and I have a machine that cleans the air, so it's very involved.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing all of that. Oh my gosh. So today specifically, we're going to be talking about pricing of artwork, which is really complicated.
Very complicated. And you may get it right and you may get it wrong.
Exactly. So when did you start selling your art?
I'd like to say maybe a year and a half ago.
Okay.
So I
it's
had been
really
doing
recent.
it for 6 months without selling it, and someone was very interested in something I had done, and someone asked me if I could recreate something that they had seen.
Wow.
And that was the start of, and it's snowballed
This
since.
is like fairly new.
Super new. I was in fashion. I was in the garment industry. So
Which I didn't know about you, which is amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's...
And
it's a
pricing as a
super-
result is something I'm still learning, because
Yeah.
every piece is different and every
Right.
piece requires either more epoxy or less epoxy, and the size and the scale of the work changes every time.
Oh my gosh. So how do you do it?
Part of it's guessing, but certainly the cost. Initially, when I first started doing resin art, unbeknownst to me, I started off with canvas. It was nice. It was cheap to learn with. But I found that because of the weight of the epoxy, it would puddle or run to one side of the canvas. So what I learned was, by trial and error, that I had to use wooden cradled canvases, which are much more expensive than canvases. They're made of wood and they have framing on the back so that no warping can take place. So where you would spend, $3 to $5 on a canvas, when you're buying these specific wooden boards with cradles, you could spend, $100, $150 just on the board, let alone the resin, the material involved, etc. So it is a learning curve.
Oh my gosh. It's a lot.
It's a lot. But
Yeah.
people that see the art, although they love it, they're like, it's very expensive, but it's very expensive
Right.
to do that
but it's
type of
also
art.
it's a lot for you to like figure out what the cost should be.
Correct.
Based on that. So I'm sure you have a formula, and
I don't have a formula.
You don't.
I don't
Okay,
have a
okay.
formula. And again, each piece, as I do it, I'm like, okay, this is what I learned from this piece.
Right.
Hopefully someone orders the same size, because then I have a formula. In addition to, when you think you're done, you may not be done.
Right.
Because you, as an artist, can find imperfections a lot in resin, hairs or little fibers that are floating in the air that land and dry and cure, in which case you
Right.
have to sand it and put another coat of resin. So where you think maybe I'm going to do a 2 or 3 coat of resin may turn into 4 or 5 coats.
Oh my gosh. So that would affect your pricing.
Correct.
Yeah.
Resin itself is pretty expensive at about $100 a gallon.
Yeah.
So
Your formula, that's not really a formula.
not
How do
really
you do
a
it?
formula. Well, a lot of it is time. A lot of art that I do, I can start and maybe put it aside. Like I'm not happy and it's not going in the direction I want. My art is almost always abstract, not, I like clean lines and things like that. So if something's not going the way I want, I can put it aside and take it out weeks later. So I would say that time and thought, in addition to the process, figures in to the pricing.
Yeah.
I've had pieces that have taken me, 5 months to complete.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working right now on a butterfly piece that is a large wooden butterfly that with each time that I make a piece, I have little bits of leftover resin and I make little butterflies. So the little butterflies, maybe I have about 70 or 75.
Oh my gosh.
Slowly will fill the big butterfly. So
Wow.
the pricing will definitely come into play with how long and how much material and
Oh
how
my
much
gosh.
thought.
Are the little butterflies, are you doing them in molds or are you doing them on little wood pieces?
They're actually
also?
little lucite pieces, so they can be somewhat transparent in some places.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
How do you value your time? Like, how do you say time is a big part of the
Time
formula.
and heart, right? There are
Yeah,
pieces that you
time,
absolutely love that it
heart.
actually hurts to part with.
And also the thinking time, like the
Thinking.
time to think about the piece as a whole.
Correct.
Right? Like how artists value their time and how we turn that into monetary value. Like, how do you do that for yourself?
It's a hard process.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I think, what would I be willing to pay for a piece? After you figure out the whole what it costs you and how long it took, and you come up with a number, whatever that number is, hypothetically, if it's $1,500, and you definitely battle inside, would I pay $1,500 for this, or do I feel like that's beyond costly? And sometimes I have pieces that are $2,500, but obviously it has to move you enough that you feel that I put in the time, I definitely put in the effort, I love it,
Right.
I think it's worth it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say that you are your own customer?
Worst enemy?
Worst enemy, for
I am my
sure.
worst enemy,
But
yes.
would you say that you're your own customer too?
I totally am.
Okay.
Totally. And
Cool.
that applies even to color and line and everything else. I am my worst critic. I find every little thing that is wrong with it before I walk away and go, I'm done. It's beautiful. It's perfect. Because I do a lot of line work. If I see a little tiny line that's out of place, I'm bound to start over. And at some point, one of the hardest things is to just say,
Oh my
that's
gosh,
it.
yeah, to know
It's
when you're
good.
done.
Yes.
It's
very
so hard. So how'd you make your way to Princeton Makes?
I live in East Windsor. My daughter is a stylist at a salon next door.
Amazing.
And she saw this being built. And she knew that I had been selling via Facebook and Instagram and from my house. And she spoke to Jim. And she called me up and she said, I found someplace, you have to go speak to him.
Ooh, I just got chills.
And that's how it happens. Yeah.
It's so
It was
good.
very good.
So that's a really interesting question too. Here, compared to selling on Facebook and your local community, how does that compare or differ? Or do you see any patterns?
I find that since I'm not one of the artists that have a studio, so I don't have the interaction so much with the customers that are walking through.
Right.
Although I sometimes get feedback from people at the desk that say someone was very interested. With Facebook and Instagram, people are able to reach out to me directly.
Right.
That's the difference for me. I'm sure for people who have studios here that are able to speak to the clients that are here, it's a different situation.
Right.
But be it that I use the resin, I can't do that.
Right, of course. I do want to make a quick note. Here at Princeton Makes, we have some artists that have studio spaces where they actually work out of the co-op space. And they're working while there's customers walking through the shop and people see them in action. And then there's a whole bunch of artists, myself included, that don't have studio spaces here. And we just bring our art and we sell it here in the marketplace. So I just wanted to clarify that a little bit more.
Which is part of what makes it a co-op. Everyone is
Right.
here at some point. If you're not in a studio, then you take time and you work retail.
Exactly.
So the artists that don't have studio space are still here sporadically for you to meet, which is great.
Definitely. Do you actively try to sell on social media, or it's more
Not
like
so-
people
for
see?
me, not so much on Facebook because I
Okay.
keep that like personal. Although occasionally I have something I'm super proud of and I'll post it. But I do have on Instagram specifically Picasso Designs, which is my art,
Okay.
and I post there. And I ask people if they're interested to DM, so it's not a sale that everyone is privy to.
Right.
And we do it privately, but I do
Nice.
post works there.
Okay, so back to the pricing just a little bit more. Feedback with your pricing. When customers like find out the pricing of a set of your coasters or one of your, boards or candles or anything like that.
Well, I will say this. Initially, I started off doing wall art resin,
Okay.
The pricing is obviously higher
Right.
than the other things.
The functional items.
Right. So it certainly photographs differently than seeing it in person.
Yeah.
And seeing it, not three-dimensional, people are very surprised what it actually looks like in person. And people love it a lot, but can't afford the wall art, which is how I started doing the charcuterie boards and the candles and the
coasters.
coasters. Thank you.
Yes.
So
you're
that
kinda
it was
taking-
more affordable.
Okay.
And because the resin on a 20 by 20 takes gallons,
Right.
on a charcuterie board, it's just a small section. So
Right.
I'm able to price it reasonably that people can afford it.
Right.
So in terms of pricing, you don't have to buy an entire piece covered in resin to own
Right.
resin art.
And you found a way to
I
make
found
your
a way.
art kind of affordable throughout, you
And
have
it's-
like a whole range of
Right.
pricing now.
Right. So
yeah.
you have thousands.
Right.
And you have, under $50.
Right.
So
And you
there
even
is a
have
range.
the like small magnets
Oh,
now
the
too.
magnets, aren't those cute? I
Yes,
think
they're
almost
so
gone.
cute.
They're cute.
They're so cute. Yeah. But I think that's really smart. Yeah, it's innovative.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because you found like there was an obstacle there. There's
There
an
was an
obstacle with the
obstacle.
pricing, and you were able to kind of scale down in a way. I don't even want to say scale down, but you were able to kind of pivot in a way where you
People
were
could
able
still afford it.
exactly,
And it's practical.
and it's practical.
So it's not something you stick in a drawer and forget about it.
Right.
It's something that can be out all the time.
right.
Yeah.
It's awesome. Okay, so thank you. So we're gonna go into some quick questions, and these are questions that we're gonna ask every guest that comes on the podcast, kind of like a quick fire. And we have some opening music by one of our own, Renata. So here it is. Are you ready?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. What is your favorite artist of all time?
Oh my goodness. I love Monet.
Mm-hmm.
I do love Monet. I have to tell you that art history was like my least favorite class of all time. I don't like classical art. I loved Monet because up front, very abstract. Of course, when you
Yes.
move back, it all came together. But his color and his graphic little dots were my favorite.
Yeah, I love that. What's your favorite material to create with?
Not just resin, but acrylic as well, because part of resin art you can tint with acrylic paint, so acrylic paint.
Cool. What is the space that you feel the most creative in?
It would be my house, because my studio is physically in my house.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, yes.
What is your worst artistic nightmare?
Doing a portrait or a still life.
Oh my gosh.
Like, just, no.
Me too. That
I-
sounds
yeah.
so scary.
And the funny part is, being a fashion designer, life drawing was, to draw a figure of
Right.
a person, and I would just dread it.
Oh my gosh.
Right.
Fascinating.
Yes.
Okay. And the last one, what is one word that describes how you feel when you create?
Enlightened.
Ooh, I love that.
Thank you. Makes me happy. Does it make you
Yes,
happy?
of course. So thanks, Pam, for coming on today
so much fun.
and being our first guest. Do you want to tell us where we can find you, other than Princeton Makes, of course?
Just that would be at Instagram at Padasso, Padaso Designs, plural.
We'll see you guys next time. And if you have any questions or comments or suggestions, please email us at princetonmakes@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram, all at Princeton Makes, I believe. And you can come visit us on Thursday through Sunday, 10 to 6 in the Princeton Shopping Center. This podcast was created by Zohar Lavi-Hasson and yours truly, Rebecca Swan, as your host. And the theme music is by Renata. See you next time. Yay!